Yes, I'm back for another edition of PFT PM. It's Tuesday, February 17, second day of the annual PFT Live postseason hiatus. We're only off for 1 week. We'll be back on Monday before we head to the scouting combine for Tuesday through Friday. It will be grueling. It will be chock full of interviews. And it's always funny. The people out there who want to dismiss our reporting and analysis and whatever, who like to say, nobody talks to you, you don't know anyone in the league, they're all very quiet during a week like next week when it's going to be a revolving door, one after another of coach and GM and prospect. And that's just the stuff that happens on the air. There'll be plenty of conversations with people off the air and off the record as we get an idea of the landscape of the league heading into the full-blown 2026 offseason. Some would argue that the 2026 offseason also is full-blown and in full bloom. Today is the day that the window opens for the application of franchise tags and transition tags. Now, the transition tag is rarely used. I'll probably explain that at a later date, but it became irrelevant basically once the amount of the tag became fully guaranteed. It used to not be fully guaranteed. It now is once the player accepts it. So most teams, if they're going to do anything, will apply the franchise tag. And why do you need 2 weeks to do it? It's a deadline-driven business. The one reason to apply the tag early is to make sure that when everybody goes to Indianapolis next week for the scouting combine, better known as Tampering Central, they know not to waste their time because this guy's not hitting the market. He's been tagged. So if anyone tags a player between now and Friday, that's intended to let everyone know you're wasting your time if you try to talk to this guy's agent in Indy. And I'll explain later in the week why tampering is so rampant at the scouting combine. We discussed it every year, but I'm sure people are surprised, like, how can this happen? Well, there's no way to trace it because most of it is done face-to-face. Now, one of the guys who will likely, through his agent, have conversations with other teams next week in Indianapolis, Kenneth Walker III, the Seahawks running back. On the morning that the 2-week window for applying the tags opened, Adam Schefter of ESPN reported it's unlikely that the Seahawks will tag Walker. Why would the Seahawks leak that? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. Number one, if you're a Seahawks fan, you're waiting and wondering what's going to happen with Kenneth Walker III, the Super Bowl MVP. What are they going to do? Let's not have 2 weeks of speculation. Let's not have 2 weeks of the 12s hitting the refresh button at PFT to see if and when they've tagged him. Everyone knows right now it's not going to happen. Now, unlikely creates a little bit of wiggle room. If they do it, well, I never said they weren't going to do it. I just said it was unlikely. But at the same time, I think it's an unmistakable message. Go ahead. See what's out there. That's the other side of this. I think any conversations that have been had to date between the Seahawks and Walker's representatives presumably resulted in a conclusion by the Seahawks. You know what? Whatever this guy wants on a long-term deal, he ain't going to find that. That's not out there. He's not going to get that. So go see. Go ahead and do your tampering. Sometimes tampering is good. The player finds out, the agent finds out that the number isn't going to be where they think it should be. Because what you've got to balance if you're in the Kenneth Walker III business, and I'm not taking anything away from the guy. He had a 1,000-yard season his rookie year. Injuries became an issue year 2, year 3. Year 4, he came on strong late. Zach Charbonnet tears an ACL, and Kenneth Walker III becomes the guy. He had multiple 100-yard rushing games in the postseason. He had 135 and became the Super Bowl MVP. He's hitting free agency at the right time. And all it takes is one team to say, we don't care about the full body of work. We don't care about what he's going to do moving forward. We want to be able to have a press conference where we hold up a new Kenneth Walker III jersey and get our fans excited, and they'll renew their season tickets, and they'll buy the jersey, and they'll get excited, and they'll think that we have a chance to turn it around. And it seems like there's always a team that's willing to make a bad football decision that is actually a good business decision. So the invitation from Walker or to Walker from the Seahawks is, go ahead. Whatever you want from us, we're confident you're not going to find. And then the question becomes, how much better will someone else make that offer over what Seattle was willing to pay? And I remember a time where it felt like other teams were motivated to break up a championship team when the Cowboys team of the 90s, which came of age just as free agency was being introduced into the equation with the salary cap and whatnot. It seemed like teams would do everything they could to pick off one of the Cowboys players and weaken the franchise. I don't get the impression teams do that now. They don't do it out of spite. They don't do it to try to throw stones at the guy that's on the top of the mountain. They still have to make good decisions for themselves, whether it's a football decision or a business decision. But we'll see how aggressively other teams try to take away the guy who was the Super Bowl MVP for the Seattle Seahawks, whether or not he ends up back in Seattle. But $14.1 million on a one-year franchise tag, not likely to happen for a guy who has made $8.4 million in 4 years in the NFL and has a chance to get paid. If he doesn't get an 8-figure per year contract, that's a direct product of the fact that the running back position continues to be devalued. Why? Because the supply outweighs the demand. Why? Because there's so many guys coming into the league every year who have played running back at a high level in college and can do the same thing in the NFL. The keys are, can you block for the guy? Can you trust him to hold on to the football? And is he reliable when it's time to pick up blitzers in pass protection? If you can check those three boxes, you can take a guy and turn him into a 1,000-yard rusher. And then when it's time to pay him, well, we'll just draft, or as the case may be, not draft. Sign a guy as an undrafted free agent who can come in and do the same thing. So Kenneth Walker III getting the opportunity next week in Indy to see what other teams may be willing to pay, because the Seahawks unlikely to apply that franchise tag. And look, the unlikely provides one final safe harbor for the Seahawks. If all of a sudden the word gets back that teams are ready to throw ridiculous money at Kenneth Walker III, maybe they reassess the situation. Maybe that wakes them up. Maybe they end up avoiding what happened to the Giants with Saquon Barkley, and they have a bolt of lightning that comes belatedly, and they say, hey, yeah, well, all we leaked was unlikely. We didn't say we weren't going to do it. So 2 weeks, 4 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, March the 3rd. That's when the window closes. So it's not binding. It's not final until the 2-week tag window shuts until next year. One of the big stories in recent days, the NFLPA report cards. Quick summary. The NFL won a grievance ruling on the question of whether or not the report cards can be publicized. The NFL lost on the question of whether or not the report cards can be destroyed. They still exist, and a new wave is coming, and I'm told that they are coming soon. Now, typically, the results are announced and published during Scouting Combine week. Whether it's that week or the next, the idea of the report cards is to give players full information as they approach free agency. Free agency opens essentially on March 9. That's when the negotiating window commences. But next week's tampering central. To the extent that players are going to begin the process of figuring out where they want to play, the sooner they see those report cards, the sooner they can factor it in. How big of a factor is it? I don't know, but it's one of those all things equal considerations. If I've got two teams that want me and the financial offer is the same, what tips the scale? And if one team's getting A's and one team's getting F minuses, I'm more inclined to take the offer from the team that has managed to generate positive feedback from its players. And what that may do for the teams that are consistently at the bottom, they may have to cough up a little more money to get that guy to come play for them. And that's always where you want to be in free agency. You want to be the team that doesn't have to pay extra. You want to be the team that it can pay less and still get the guy. That's the best. At a minimum, you want to be a team that can win the jump ball if the next best offer is the same as yours. You don't want to be the team that has to pay more money. So the report cards are coming soon, and I am very confident that at least one member of the NFL Players Association will find a way to leak those report cards and all the commentary with no digital footprints. And if the NFL wants to go scorched earth to try to find out who leaked it, good, do it. Do it. Bring it on. Bring it on. And I hope that when those report cards are leaked, I'll click on my email box one day or an app that may be even more secure, and they'll be in there. And the moment I get them, you'll get them, because this is stuff that I think needs to be out there. The fans need to know about it. And the fact that the NFL doesn't want us to know about it is going to make us even more determined to make sure that everyone knows what those report cards show for 2026 and beyond. Monday was a busy day for the Miami Dolphins. They parted ways officially with 3 players, Tyreek Hill, James Daniels, and Nick Westbrook-Akine. And it was also reported that Bradley Chubb will be released. I think his release is going to be coming on March 11th, so they can take that cap hit and spread it over 2 years by making him a post-June 1 release. You can't officially release a guy until the start of the league year with the post-June 1 designation and take advantage of that opportunity to spread out the cap hit. The one guy we're waiting for, though, and he'll be, if he's released, a post-June 1 transaction that comes as of March 11. That's quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Remember, it was just last week that new GM John Eric Sullivan said that the team is moving toward making a decision. And the way I interpreted the comments, it's not whether or not we're going to keep him as a starter. It's what we're going to do with him. How are we going to extricate ourselves from this very bad contract that GM Chris Grier gave to Tua Tagovailoa 2 years ago? Do we just cut him? They got to pay him $54 million, fully guaranteed for 2026. And they have to deal with $99 million in dead cap charges that will be spread over 2 years. Do we do that? Or is there a way to trade him where the Dolphins will pay a large chunk of the money, take on a large piece of the salary cap obligation, and another team will acquire him? And remember, the Brock Osweiler strategy is potentially in play here, where the Dolphins actually send a draft pick with Tua Tagovailoa to get that team to take Tua off the books and take that cap money. You're basically buying a draft pick for cash and cap space. So if the Dolphins give you a second-round pick like the Texans gave to the Browns in the Brock Osweiler trade, and the Browns took on $17 million in full guarantees, that's part of this transaction. That's a way you can essentially trade for cap space or trade away cap space and get it off your books. That's a possibility as well. But they're going to have to figure it out. They're going to want to do it as soon as the new league year begins. We'll see if they find someone who will do a trade, whether it's because that team wants Tua Tagovailoa to be its starting quarterback, or whether it's because that team sees a way to maybe pick up a draft pick or two by taking on Tua's contract. If I had to guess, though, I'd say the most likely outcome is he's released, he becomes a free agent, and then we'll see what the market is, either as a starter or as a backup. I doubt that there's going to be much of a market for Tua as a starter, but we'll see. Because, again, there aren't enough good quarterbacks to go around. There aren't enough bad quarterbacks to go around. And Tua has shown that when he's healthy, he can play at an acceptable level. Now, is he a guy that's going to make chicken salad when the play that's called goes sideways? No, that's when he, as former teammate Xavier Howard said after week 1, when Howard then with the Colts faced the Dolphins, when you take away the first read, he panics. He goes into panic mode. That's exactly what Howard said. But still, he's good enough to play. He's not the only guy that when you take away the first read, short circuits. Kirk Cousins, frankly. And hell, I think there's going to be a market for Cousins. I think he played very well last year, but he's not going to be like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or the other great quarterbacks who can make something happen when the play that's called just isn't there. So Tua won't be in Miami next year. The only way he is if they just say, screw it. We got to pay this guy $54 million. We got to take the cap charge. Let's just keep him around in the event that we may need him. The problem is you've got a new regime there that's trying to turn the page. And I think it sends mixed signals to the locker room if Tua is still there. It's going to be very awkward for everyone if Tua is still there. And I doubt that Tua would want to be there. If they've moved on from him as the starter, which they will, he's there as the number 2 guy, or he's the game day inactive, or scout team safety. How many times have we seen stories about that where a quarterback who is no longer playing ends up at the walkthrough as a scout team safety? So that's not good for anybody. I think he'll be released. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. I don't think the Dolphins know at this point. They're in the process of exploring their options and making a decision. But my guess would be he gets cut on March 11 with a post-June 1 designation. They pay him the $54 million this year, less whatever he makes somewhere else. And if he signs somewhere else, he'd probably do what Russell Wilson did 2 years ago after the Broncos cut him and they owed him, I think, $38 million. You sign a one-year deal for the league minimum and you stick the Dolphins for the balance of that money. That makes him an attractive option for a team that's looking for a veteran backup because they only have to pay 1.2, 1.3 million, whatever the minimum is for a guy with Tua's level of experience. He's now entering year number 7. I mentioned that Tyreek Hill was cut yesterday by the Miami Dolphins. We talked about it on PFT PM. So where does he land next? I thought it was interesting last night that veteran Chiefs defensive tackle Chris Jones took to Twitter with a message at Cheetah. It's clock emoji. It's time. And it is fun to think of a Tyreek Hill reunion with the Chiefs when he was doing his apology tour in early 2025 after he said on the way out at the end of the 24 season, it's time for him to leave Miami. We asked him if he regrets leaving Kansas City, and he acknowledged with some degree of candor that he does. Well, this is his chance. And last year, I thought there was a chance he gets traded back to the Chiefs. If he stays healthy, I think there's a very good chance he would have been traded somewhere during the season. So Chris Jones has made his wishes known. It all comes down to what Brett Veach, the GM, Andy Reid, the head coach, what they're going to want to do. And the complicating factor is the knee. When will he be healthy? Will teams wait until he can pass a physical, or will someone want to bring him in now and preside over the rehab and get him ready that way? He can still be in meetings and he can be learning. He's just not ready to play yet. He's not healthy enough to get on the field. And the more teams that want him, the more likely that someone will say, we're going to go ahead and make a commitment. We're going to make the bet that this guy's going to be healthy. And we're willing to stake whatever the contract is that gets him through the door. And it all comes down to how many teams want him. Chiefs, we mentioned the Chargers yesterday. I may or may not have mentioned the Bills here. I know I mentioned the Bills in the post at PFT, but hey, I know the Bills think the talent level is good enough by virtue of the fact that Sean McDermott got fired and Brandon Beane got promoted, but Tyreek Hill to the Bills, if he's healthy, hell, if he's not healthy, that's better than most of the options they currently have on the roster at receiver. The Ravens, I mentioned yesterday, they make sense as well. There's other teams. You're trying to move the needle. You're trying to make a difference. The Saints, they're trying to improve their offense. The Jets wanted him 4 years ago. It came down to the Jets and the Dolphins when Tyreek Hill was traded from the Kansas City Chiefs. He chose the Dolphins over the Jets. So I know the regimes have changed in New York, but they still have needs beyond Garrett Wilson at the receiver position. The Steelers across from DK Metcalf. There are going to be teams out there that are very interested in Tyreek Hill. And it may be somebody just makes that projection. They take that risk that Tyreek Hill is going to be good to go. And if he's not, at least they tried. At least they made that effort to make their offense better. And it's clear that Chiefs defensive tackle Chris Jones, as they bring back Eric Bieniemy as offensive coordinator, as they hope that Travis Kelce will return for one more year, you bring back Tyreek Hill. You get a little bit of an old school vibe in Kansas City. Don't sleep on the Chiefs. Last year was disastrous. Patrick Mahomes tears the ACL. They're going to be determined this year. And you look around the AFC, you look at the coaching changes, you look at the turmoil. The table's going to be set for the Chiefs to reestablish themselves, and Tyreek Hill can help them do it. Last topic, and this is something that happened during Super Bowl week. It became a thing last week. Joey Porter Sr., appearing on Cam Hayward's podcast, had some strong things to say about former Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, who will be up next year for the Hall of Fame. So this topic actually, and I'll explain more in a second, it does have some significance to what's going to transpire over the course of the next year. David DeCastro, who played with Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh. He appeared on 93.7 The Fan yesterday, and here's what DeCastro had to say when the topic of Porter's comments about Roethlisberger came up.
It's just, it is what it is. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I guess, negativity seems to sell these days, but, I love playing with Ben, poor Ben, protecting him. It was a big task. And, Ben, I just love all his energy. I mean, Ben's the ultimate competitor, no matter what it is, whether it's cornhole, darts, pool, shooting, playing horse, basketball. I mean, he's a guy when you get in the huddle and he's got that energy. He does, we used to do the head tap before the games, the pregame thing, go around, tap everyone's head. And I mean, you kind of miss getting those juices flowing and, having a guy like that where that's what you need as a quarterback, that energy, that will, that want to win. It was contagious and took a lot of pride in protecting a Hall of Fame quarterback.
DeCastro showed up in Pittsburgh in 2012. That was after Roethlisberger's suspension in 2010. And I think that the reputation within the locker room for Roethlisberger had two separate phases: pre-suspension, post-suspension. I think there was some maturation. I think there was some growth. I think there were some changes as it relates to how he interacted with his teammates. Porter played there pre-suspension. Now he coached there post-suspension, but his initial opinion of Roethlisberger was formed early in his career. And there have been plenty of stories about, teammate asking for Roethlisberger to sign something that's going to be put up at a charity auction and Roethlisberger saying no. There's a story out there about Roethlisberger not attending the Jerome Bettis retirement party in Las Vegas, even though Roethlisberger was in Las Vegas at the time. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's out there. I've heard that. That's not something that we're pulling out of the sky. I know of former teammates of Ben Roethlisberger who have off the record had criticism of him. And I think moving forward, the question becomes how many former teammates will have something to say publicly or privately? Even if guys don't go on the record, because I think some of the players recognize we shouldn't be saying these things to the media. Whatever opinions we have about a former teammate should remain private. But when it's time for the 50 Hall of Fame voters to do their work, as we get the initial long list of nominees and then it gets chopped down to a shorter list and chopped down, and ultimately we have 15 modern era finalists, assuming Roethlisberger is one, and he should be. What information will the voters gather from players on the Steelers off the record about Roethlisberger as a teammate, about Roethlisberger as a leader? If it's a close question, those are fair game. And it's not easy to separate the off-the-field stuff from off the field but in the building stuff, the locker room stuff, the leadership stuff, the things that a quarterback is expected to do. Will that be an impediment? I don't know. I'm not a voter, don't want to be a voter, will never be a voter. They won't ask me. If they did, I won't do it. If they somehow overhaul the whole process and say, we need that jerk to be one of the voters, I'll say, no, thank you. So the voters are going to have to decide whether or not Roethlisberger gets in. Sims and I were talking about this last week, and Roethlisberger deserves it more than Eli Manning. Both won 2 Super Bowls. Eli Manning finished his career at 500. Roethlisberger won 66.6% of his games. And yes, Eli Manning had 2 of the great throws in Super Bowl history. That cannot be discounted. But Roethlisberger had the better overall career. If it's close, though, and now that it's harder to get in because of this weird formula the Hall of Fame came up with, probably in reaction to Deion Sanders saying too many guys get in, will that be enough for Roethlisberger to not get in on the first try, to the extent that first ballot means something? And some voters apparently think that it does. Otherwise, Bill Belichick would already be in. Well, he'll get in next year. Well, if he'll get in next year, he should be in this year. Roethlisberger's either a Hall of Famer or he isn't. And I know that the process complicates it, and you've got a logjam that's building up. Will some voters feel compelled to put Eli Manning in before Roethlisberger just because if Eli gets passed over for Roethlisberger, he may never get in? I had a voter tell me years ago when a guy got in that was like, is he really a Hall of Famer? Well, if he doesn't get in this year, he never will. That was what I was told. Well, maybe he shouldn't be in that. Maybe he never should get in. It's just a weird thing. And my primary objection to the whole process flows from the fact that They tell us football is the ultimate team sport. If football really is the ultimate team sport, and I believe it is, with 11 guys on the field at any given time, 22 on offense and defense, if it's the ultimate team sport, why do they even have a Hall of Fame? Why are there individual awards at all if it's the ultimate team sport? So, hey, bottom line, it's a museum in Canton, Ohio that becomes the epicenter of the National Football League one weekend every year. And now they've reduced the number of parties, reduced the number of busts, reduced the number of floats in the parade by reacting to something that Deion Sanders said and making it harder for guys to get in. I think if you're going to do it, let's have 6, 7, 8 guys in every year. Let's do it. There's many more people who have played professional football than there are other sports because there are 22 guys on the field at any given time. In baseball, there's 10. The 9 guys on defense and the batter. And I guess you can throw in the guys who are on base. In basketball, there's 10. In football, you got 22 guys actively contributing on every single play. A lot more players on the roster, a lot more players who have played. I got no problem with up to 8 guys getting in every year. And that's one of the criticisms Tony Dungy has of this new process. They have squandered spots. There are spots every year that are available, and they're not using them. That just makes a larger logjam, and it makes it harder for guys to get in. And Roethlisberger now joins that group. And the point is this. It's going to be incumbent on the voters who are already working for free. If they're close on Roethlisberger, what kind of a teammate was he? What kind of a leader was he? Do the guys out there fall more into the Joey Porter Sr. camp? Do they fall more into the DeCastro camp? I have a feeling if you're going to get the full scope of teammates over the years that Roethlisberger was in Pittsburgh, the scale is going to tip more toward Porter than DeCastro. But if it's relevant to Roethlisberger's potential enshrinement, that's something that the voters need to do and something for which they don't get paid a penny. My free work extends only to the AP panel. And frankly, as I've said before, the only reason I haven't quit is because they want me to. And the only reason they haven't fired me is because I want them to. And we're at an impasse and I just keep doing it. But I'm not a big fan of working for free. No one should work for free. I mean, you provide a service, you should get paid for it. The AP is getting paid for the awards that they put together every year by the NFL. The Hall of Fame is not a free enterprise. It may be a for-profit business structure, but it's not a free enterprise. They charge people to go in. It's a business. It generates revenue for the city of Canton, hotels and restaurants and all the other stuff, all the other reasons why it's a big deal every year when the Hall of Fame comes to town. So that's where we are. That's where I am. And that's it for today's edition of PFT PM. We'll be back again on Wednesday. Remember, PFT Live returns next Monday. profootballtalk.com never closes. No locks on the doors. Open 24/7. Content galore. Even in the slow weeks, we will find plenty of things for you to read if you so choose. And we thank you if you do. See you back here again tomorrow. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.